So imagine being called on unexpectedly in a meeting, and instead of freezing up or rambling on the spot, you sound clear and compelling to the point where everyone in the room is nodding their heads. So that ideal vision is totally achievable for you, because the only difference between the average communicators and the 1% elite communicators is not talent, but rather structure. But here's the thing most people don't realize. When the top speakers like the CEO of Microsoft or Nvidia or PepsiCo, when they speak, they're not just winging it. They're using powerful frameworks that keep them clear and articulate without much preparation. So today I'm gonna reveal the exact frameworks that the top 1% communicators use so that you can make them your own and be memorable yourself. Hey, I'm Preston Chin, and I create videos that help you speak brilliantly when you're put on the spot at work. So let's get into it. But before we dive in, there's one key foundational prerequisite that you need to understand. You have to know your desired outcome for your communication. So specifically, every response that you have should have one of these three goals clearly in mind. Number one is informational. What key information do you want them to know by the end of you talking? Number two is emotional. What's the key emotion you want them to feel after you've spoken with them? And number three is action. What's the key action that you want them to take after you've spoken with them? But how do you actually put that into practice? Well, take 10 years ago. I was a marketing coordinator, and I would deliver pitches to prospective sponsors of the National Basketball Association. And before, I would be very monotone, not clear on exactly what I wanted them to feel after I've delivered my pitch. But once I had this know, feel, do framework, I then said, I want my prospect to feel excited about the opportunity to sponsor our events and ultimately sign with us. So what did I do? When I spoke, I brought that level of excitement. If you can't bring the core emotion that you want your audience to feel when you speak with them, they're not gonna feel it. So the best way you do this is by showing it with your face. You ever hear people say that superpower that you might have is your ability to light up the room? The only way you get people to feel that way is if you show those emotions with your face. So before we get into any frameworks, I want you to be rooted in what you want your audience to know, feel, and do, and make sure that your facial expressions in particularly mirror the emotion, whether it's confidence, assurance, excitement, that you want your audience to feel as well. So with that foundation in place, let's now focus on the first key framework to instantly elevate your communication. That framework is called the what, so what, now what framework. So this first framework is ideal for articulating updates or explaining situations concisely, especially to managers and leadership. So here's how it works. So the what is in about 1 to 2 sentences stating what happened or what's the current situation. So what explains why this is specifically important to your audience. And now what is stating what should happen next or what you want your audience to do given what you've shared. But the real power of this framework is that it forces you to consider your audience first, because so many people make the mistake of drowning their audience in irrelevant details or not connecting to what truly matters. So this framework prevents that common error. But to really understand it, let me show you this in action. Try to spot how Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, uses this framework to explain the importance of accelerated computing.
Accelerated computing has reached the tipping point. General purpose computing has run out of steam. We need another way of doing computing so that we can continue to scale, so that we can continue to drive down the cost of computing, so that we can continue to consume more and more computing while being sustainable. Accelerated computing is a dramatic speed up over general purpose computing. And in every single industry we engage, and I'll show you many, the impact is dramatic.
So let's break this down. What's the what part of the framework? He says accelerated computing has reached the tipping point. General purpose computing has run out of steam. That's a clear explanation of the current state, which isn't ideal. For the so what, he says we need another way of doing computing so that we continue to scale, so that we can continue to drive down the cost of computing, so that we can continue to consume more and more computing while being sustainable. This clearly explains why accelerated computing is so important. And the now what is accelerated computing is a dramatic speed up over general purpose computing. And in every single industry we engage, and I'll show you many, the impact is dramatic. So in other words, the now what is forward looking to explain just how important accelerated computing can be. That's why Jensen clearly explains the problem, why the problem matters, and how he'll demonstrate the solution. But what happens if you're asked a question that you're not expecting? Well, that's where this second framework comes in handy. It's called PREP. It stands for point, reason, example, point. It's best for answering questions that you're not expecting, when you need to come up with a clear, credible answer but don't have a lot of time to prepare. Here's the structure. Point is one simple sentence that articulates your main message up front. Reason is a simple explanation or rationale behind your main point. Example is a data point or anecdote that further substantiates your main point. And the final point is either a restatement of that original point or it's an even broader takeaway. So why does this framework work so well? Well, it's because it follows that natural path of human persuasion where we activate our left and our right sides of our brains. The logical left side, which are the core facts, the reasons, the data points, as well as the stories that activate our emotional or right side of our brains. But I want you to see this framework in action to truly understand it. Try to spot exactly how Mark Mader is using the PREP framework to answering this question from CNBC.
I think we really focus on getting back to the basics. And when you speak with customers about how we can help drive revenue for them or achieve cost savings, they're really interested in listening. I mean, one great example of this last quarter was a large appliance manufacturer is trying to get their product to market more quickly. How can we deliver the same number of campaigns we used to with less cost, with greater accuracy? And when you have a customer who's able to take a cycle that's typically 16 weeks, knock it down to 4 weeks, eliminate agency costs where it falls right to the bottom line, those are the types of stories people respond to today. And that's one of many stories like that we had last quarter.
So summarizing the main point, he's saying that we need to get back to the basics, which are helping customers drive revenue and save costs. And his reason for that is because customers themselves really value those two things: driving revenue and saving costs. Notice for the example, he uses what we call a signpost, where he says a quick phrase that signals to the audience where he is in the framework. He says, one great example of this is a large appliances manufacturer, right? And then he tells a story about how they use Smartsheet to accomplish those business goals that he articulated as being very important in the beginning. The other key piece is how he uses specific details to make his example come to life for us. He says how a customer took a cycle from 16 weeks to 4 weeks. That's concrete enough for us to really imagine and understand the impact. And then he summarizes by saying this is one of many stories that we've heard over the past quarter. So what makes this framework so valuable is how it balances assertion with evidence. Because you don't just state your opinion, you then back it up with explanations and reasons. And when you have this structure, it makes you come off as really thoughtful, even when you're speaking off the cuff. Now, if you're interested in learning more of these impromptu speaking frameworks, I strongly encourage you to sign up for my weekly Impromptu Speakers newsletter, where every single Saturday I share with you new frameworks and tips to be a more clear and confident speaker at work. But after you've given your clear points, how do you end your talk in a way that leaves a lasting impression? Well, that's where the third framework comes in. It's called ARA or ARA. It stands for Attention, Remember, Application. Now, to explain this, you need to understand the audience attention curve, which is your audience's attention is highest at the beginning and the end of your speech, your presentation, your talk. It tends to dip in the middle. So the question is, how do we maximize this attention real estate that we're gifted? Well, that's why attention is so important in this framework. You grab the audience's attention by explaining something personal or unexpected. Oftentimes, you can either bring a prop or an object or use a metaphor or an analogy to drive the point home. Then R stands for remember. You want to have a key lesson that your audience will definitely remember that is tied to how you grab their attention in the first place. And then finally, application. This means how would you apply the key lesson that you just shared in your own personal life so that it feels more real, more concrete for your audience. But to see this in action, let's see how the CEO of Accenture, Julie Sweet, applies the ARA framework when she gives closing remarks about leadership on the stage.
I just want to maybe share as we close. I have this little thing in my mudroom I live in the DC area, that my husband hung up. And he hung it up right the last couple of years before I became the global CEO. And it says, he likes really cheesy things, by the way, I'm just gonna give you that up front. But he won in this case, because it's super cheesy and I didn't wanna hang it, but I live by it now. It says, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. And it's a personal motto of mine as a leader and as a person, because when I'm feeling like, wow, like this is big and it's different, then I know I'm pushing my organization and myself. If you go to work every day and you never feel a little like, wow, can we really pull this off? Then most likely someone is passing you by.
So Julie grabs your attention by mentioning something unexpected, which is the mudroom, or the object that her husband got her. During the remember part, notice how she repeats this key phrase. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. When you can repeat a simple sentence, it's so helpful to making sure your audience never forgets it. And then she explains how that mantra has applied to her own day-to-day life. That makes that key lesson resonate that much more with her audience. Do you see how much more profound this type of conclusion is than just stating, well, in conclusion, here's my main points? Julie draws us in by telling a personal story, and I cannot emphasize that enough. If you can tell personal stories with the ARA framework, especially in your conclusion, you're going to resonate much more with your audience. So look what happens when you combine all these frameworks. What, so what, now what creates clarity when giving clear updates. Prep gives you a clear, concise structure whenever you're answering a question that you're not immediately prepared for. ARA, to ensure that your message is memorable when you close. Mastering these frameworks day in and day out will help you be a clear, confident communicator without needing to overscript, over-prepare. But the key problem isn't just memorizing these frameworks, it's actually applying them so that they become part of your day-to-day speech. And if you want that type of practice and coaching from me, then I strongly recommend signing up for the waitlist for my Impromptu Speakers Academy. It's my signature program where I work with a handful of students to help you become brilliant on-the-spot speakers at work. There's a link to sign up in the description below. But aside from these frameworks, what if you're just not feeling confident in your ability to speak? Well, if you want to delete your fear of speaking, make sure to check out this video right here.